There was a glitch in the Matrix this week, a moment so bizarre and revealing that it almost felt scripted, yet it was the most unscripted reality we've seen in years. It happened during what was supposed to be a standard glorified photo op, a Donald Trump cabinet meeting. You know the drill. He sits at the head of that comically long table, surrounded by sycophants whose only job is to nod enthusiastically at every nonsensical syllable that falls out of his mouth. But this time the script broke. Halfway through a wandering, incoherent monologue about trade deals that don't exist and economic victories that live only in his head, Fox News, his safe space, his propaganda arm, did the unthinkable. They pulled the plug. They actually cut the feed, threw to a commercial break, and came back talking about literally anything else. Think about the magnitude of that decision for a second. This is the network that has spent nearly a decade acting as his personal PR firm, justifying his crimes, polishing his image, and sanitizing his authoritarian instincts for middle America. When even they decide that they cannot, in good conscience, let their audience see you speak live, it tells you everything you need to know about the state of play. This wasn't Fox protecting Trump from the liberal media. This was Fox trying to protect their viewers from the reality of Trump. They saw a man in undeniable, rapid cognitive and physical freefall, and they knew that no amount of spin could fix what the camera was capturing. Before we dive deeper into the terrifying implications of this, I need to ask you a favor. We are trying to build a community that sees through the smoke and mirrors. If you want to be part of that, please hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video to help the algorithm find more truth seekers, and share this with someone who needs to see what's really going on. Now let's peel back the layers of what actually happened in that room, because the snippets that escaped before the blackout are genuinely disturbing. Trump attempted to discuss economic data, but discuss is doing a lot of heavy lifting. What he actually did was vomit up a word salad of random integers, confusing sovereign nations with private companies and getting lost in his own sentence structures. He started rambling about bringing back, and I'm quoting the confusion here, 400 billion, maybe 500 billion. People are saying $600 billion, claiming this money was coming from China, Canada, and the European Union, which he then weirdly clarified as essentially Germany, if you think about it. He capped it off by claiming nobody has ever seen numbers like this in history. You know why? Because those numbers aren't real. They aren't policy. They aren't even clever political spin. That is the sound of a man desperately grabbing at figures that sound big and impressive because he has absolutely no grasp on the reality of the subject matter. But forget the words for a moment and look at the body language. It's visceral. Watch how he clutches the edge of the table with white-knuckled intensity. Watch how he leans his entire body weight forward, as if the furniture is the only thing tethering him to the vertical world. And look at the eyes of his aides, Caroline Leavitt, Stephen Miller, the whole crew. They aren't looking at him with respect. They are watching him the way a nurse watches a high-risk patient, coiled and ready to spring into action if he topples over. And the moment it was done, no questions, no grandstanding with the press pool. His handlers shuffled him out of that room with a speed that his aging legs struggled to match. They know, everyone in that orbit knows. And this brings us to the most dangerous realization of the week. Donald Trump's staff has stopped serving him. They are now managing him. There is a massive difference. Think back to his first term. Love him or loathe him, the man was omnipresent. He would stand in front of a running helicopter chopper and scream stream of consciousness grievances for an hour. He was chaotic, but he was there. He was driving the bus. Now, he is a ghost in his own administration. He barely appears in public, and when he does, it is strictly controlled. He's reading off teleprompters for remarks that he used to riff on effortlessly. The press is kept at a distance. The questions are pre-screened, and the second he goes off script, they cut the feed. Why are they doing this? Because the people actually running the show, Stephen Miller, Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, are no longer working for Donald Trump's agenda. They are cannibalizing the presidency to feed their own. There were reports just this week that Stephen Miller has set up a shadow communication channel, feeding information directly to Trump and bypassing the official White House structure entirely. That isn't loyalty. That is a palace coup. That is someone positioning themselves as the de facto president while the figurehead withers away. Elon Musk is out there openly contradicting Trump's policy stances. J.D. Vance is doing solo interviews, auditioning for the role of the steady hand who will take over. They aren't serving him, they are harvesting him. They are using his declining authority to enrich themselves, rig the markets, and push their own radical agendas, all while waiting for the inevitable moment when he is too incapacitated to stop them. Trump is a passenger in a car. He thinks he's driving. And this loss of control is driving him insane. This is where the psychology becomes fascinating and terrifying. You might have missed this story buried under the headlines, but Donald Trump is currently holding critical federal infrastructure funds hostage. He is blocking the Gateway Project, essential transportation repairs for the entire Northeast Corridor, unless he gets something in return. He wants his name on things. Specifically, he is extorting Senator Chuck Schumer, demanding that they rename Dulles Airport and Penn Station in New York after him. Read that again. The President of the United States is blackmailing a senator to carve his name onto public buildings. On the surface, it's pathetic, the act of a malignant narcissist who is deeply insecure. But if you zoom out and look at the pattern of the last few months, it's not just vanity, it's panic, absolute existential panic about his legacy. He forced the Kennedy Center to rename itself the John F. Kennedy and Donald J. Trump Center for the Performing Arts. He couldn't stand JFK having a solo spotlight. He has commissioned a gigantic arch in Washington, D.C., a literal triumphal arch dedicated to himself. Historians are looking at this and ringing the alarm bells because this is exactly what happens in the twilight years of dictators. Look at Saddam Hussein in the late 90s, building palaces while his country crumbled under sanctions. Look at Stalin, whose cult of personality went into overdrive as his health failed and his paranoia peaked. When autocrats feel the end approaching, whether that end is political, physical, or both, they accelerate the monument building. They try to pour their legacy into concrete and stone because they realize a terrifying truth. They have lost control of the narrative. Trump knows it's slipping away. You can hear it in his voice. You can see it in the frantic nature of his social media posts. If you're finding this analysis helpful in connecting the dots, take a second to support the channel. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on these vanity projects. Do you think they'll actually get built? And don't forget to like the video. It really helps us keep going. Just this week, out of nowhere, Trump started posting about whether or not he's going to get into heaven. He claimed fake news was reporting that he said he wouldn't get in. But here's the catch. Nobody was reporting that. No one. He invented a rumor just to refute it because he is the one thinking about it. This is a man who has never shown a shred of genuine religious reflection, who couldn't name a Bible verse if his life depended on it, who famously said he has never asked God for forgiveness. And now? Now he's obsessed with the afterlife. That isn't politics. That is a man staring into the abyss of his own mortality and realizing that all the branding in the world doesn't work on the other side. We're hearing leaks from Mar-a-Lago that he's holding meetings about his funeral. He's obsessed with the optics of his burial, asking what people will say, how the crowds will look. He is trying to negotiate with history in real time, and he is losing. There is no better metaphor for this legacy panic than what happened with the Kennedy Center. After he strong-armed them into adding his name, after the plaque was hung and the ego was stroked, the center simply shut down, closed, indefinitely. The official reason is renovations, but let's be real. Trump could not handle the reality that his name was sharing billing with a president remembered for vision and sacrifice. He couldn't risk the comparison. He couldn't risk the lack of adoration. So like a petulant child, he took his ball and went home. Mark my words, and you can come back to this video in a decade to check the receipts. Every single monument Trump forces into existence right now will eventually become a badge of shame. Hotels will scrub the gold letters from their facades to stop the boycotts. Some already have. The buildings will be renamed. That arch, if it ever gets built, will be torn down or turned into a memorial for his victims. Even his own children are starting to pivot, distancing themselves from the toxic brand to salvage their own social standing. These aren't monuments to greatness. They are future tourist attractions for mockery. People will visit them the way they visit Confederate statues, not to honor the man, but to remember the mistake we survived. Trump senses this. It's eating him alive. But we have to understand that this isn't just about an old man's vanity. This obsession with monuments is the cover for something much darker. It is directly linked to what his administration is doing to other people's history. At the exact same moment that Trump is trying to plaster his name on every flat surface in America, his administration is systematically erasing black history. This wasn't an accident, it was a day one priority. We've seen the DEI rollbacks, the purges at the Smithsonian, the mandates forcing schools to strip the civil rights movement and Jim Crow from the curriculum. They are even scrubbing archives with a clumsiness that would be funny if it weren't so Orwellian. Look at the Enola Gay incident. They literally ran a Control-F search for the word gay in the Federal Museum archives and deleted everything they found. They removed an exhibit about the plane that dropped the atomic bomb just because the word gay was in the name. It's incompetence, yes, but it's incompetence weaponized for a specific goal, historical erasure. People say, well, Trump is a racist, so of course he wants to hide black history. And yes, that is true. His administration is staffed with white supremacists who hate these stories. But bigotry is only half the explanation. The deeper reason is strategic. Fascism requires amnesia. Authoritarianism cannot survive a population that remembers how it works. It cannot function if people know the history of resistance. There was a profound moment recently on a podcast featuring Andrew Schultz and Charlemagne the God that perfectly encapsulated this awakening. Schultz, who has spent years making excuses for Trump, telling people to calm down, dismissing the alarm bells, finally hit a wall. He looked shocked. He said, "I never thought I'd see this in America." He was talking about federal agents shooting people in the streets, families being ripped apart, authorized thugs hunting citizens. And Charlemagne looked at him and delivered a line that cut through the noise like a razor. "You never thought it would happen to white people, because this is the reality. This is American history. This has always been American history. Where do people think policing in this country comes from? It began as slave patrols. That is the origin story. Armed men deputized by the state to hunt down black bodies, to enforce captivity, to terrorize communities into submission. That is the DNA of American law enforcement. Look at the ICE raids happening today. Agents kicking down doors without warrants, snatching parents away from children, disappearing people into a labyrinth of detention centers. That isn't a new invention. That is a direct photocopy of the fugitive slave laws, where federal marshals were empowered to cross state lines, hunt human beings, and drag them back into bondage. The militarized beatings of protesters, the surveillance of activists, the criminalization of helping your neighbor. Black Americans have been living through this for 400 years. Indigenous communities wrote the manual on surviving this kind of state violence and blood. Trump isn't inventing American authoritarianism, he is just democratizing it. He is expanding the target list. American authoritarianism has finally come for everyone else, and that is why they are so desperate to erase black history. Because if the broader American public actually understood that history, they would recognize exactly what they are looking at right now. They would see the pattern. If we truly knew Frederick Douglass, we would understand the mechanics of speaking truth to power when the law is against you. If we studied Harriet Tubman, we would know how to build underground networks to protect the vulnerable. If we learned from Ida B. Wells, we would know how to document atrocities and shame a nation into facing its crimes. If we listened to Fannie Lou Hamer, we would understand grassroots organizing against a corrupt political machine. If we studied the Black Panther Party's free breakfast program, we would know that mutual aid is a revolutionary act, that feeding your community makes you less dependent on a government that wants you to starve. If we studied A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin, we would know how to shut down the entire economy when the powerful refuse to listen. They aren't erasing history because they are ashamed of the past. They are erasing it because they are terrified of an informed future. They know that if you learn how Black Americans resisted slavery, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration, you will have the blueprint to resist them. That is why the monument building and the history purging are happening simultaneously. They are two sides of the same fascist coin. Build shrines to the regime, bulldoze the shrines to resistance, control the past to lock down the future. But here is the thing. Donald Trump is too arrogant to understand. It's not going to work. His legacy is already written, it's set in stone, and no amount of renamed airports can change it. January 6th will be taught for centuries. not as a protest, but as a violent fascist coup attempt by a loser who couldn't handle defeat. His face will be the illustration next to the word insurrection in every textbook printed from now until the end of time. His COVID response, telling desperate people to inject bleach, holding super spreader rallies that killed his own supporters, dismantling the pandemic playbook just because Obama wrote it, that is his legacy. The family separation policy, babies in cages, toddlers forced to appear in immigration court alone, thousands of families permanently shattered, that is his legacy. 2 impeachments, 34 felony convictions, adjudicated sexual assault, fraud, espionage, theft of classified secrets. That is the legacy. Future generations aren't going to debate whether he was a strong leader. They are going to ask with horror and confusion, how on earth did Americans fall for this con man twice? His name won't be synonymous with success. It will be the shorthand for American decline, for the near death of democracy. Every monument he builds now is just one more thing we will have to tear down later. Every building he names is just a future sandblasting project. But you want to know what the real monument to this era will be? It won't be an arch in D.C. It won't be an airport. The true monument is the resistance. It's the millions of women who marched the day after his inauguration and refused to go back to the kitchen. It's the sanctuary cities that stood firm and said, "We will not be your deportation force." It's the election workers who faced death threats to protect the vote. It's the journalists who were branded enemies of the people but kept printing the truth. It's the lawyers fighting in the trenches. It's the mutual aid networks feeding the hungry. It's the Gen Z activists fighting for the climate. It's the trans kids who refuse to be erased. That is the monument. The history books will record that when authoritarianism came to America, millions of people stood up and said, "No, not here, not us." That monument is being built right now, brick by brick, by people like you. And that brings me back to Chuck Schumer and this pathetic airport negotiation. Senator Schumer, you have one job. 1. Do not negotiate with terrorists. Do not build shrines to tyrants. Do not give this man a single inch of legacy preservation while he is actively burning down the republic. The answer to his extortion is no. Build the Gateway Project because it's necessary, and name it after the workers who pour the concrete, not the wannabe dictator holding the checkbook hostage. This is a test. For Schumer, for the Democrats, and for all of us. Are we going to resist, or are we going to make deals with fascism because it's convenient? Trump's team is counting on us being tired. They are banking on our amnesia. They want us to forget how we got here. So here is our counter strategy. We document everything, every lie, every crime, every abuse of power. We create the record that they are trying to burn. We learn the history they are trying to ban. Read James Baldwin. Read Frederick Douglass. Read the scholars they are firing. Learn the strategies of resistance they don't want you to know. We build the counter-narrative right now while they are still in power, so that when this dark chapter ends, and it will end, the history that survives is the truth, not their fantasy. If you are still listening, you are the resistance. You are part of the living monument we are building to truth and justice. I need you to stay in this fight. If you're with us, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a blue heart in the comments to let me know you're part of the army of memory. Chuck Schumer, do the right thing. No airports, no deals. And to everyone else, keep fighting, keep documenting, keep learning. They need your silence to win. Don't give it to them.